Vec sat in the grand library of the High Council, surrounded by ancient scrolls and glowing data tablets. The air smelled of old paper and dust, a place forgotten by most. He traced his fingers over a faded document, reading words written thousands of years ago. The text spoke of a species called humans. According to the records, they were strong, intelligent, and fearless in battle. But there was one problem. There was no proof they ever existed. Across the galaxy, humans were just a myth, a story told to scare children. Some said they were gods of war. Others believed they were wiped out before the great civilizations rose. Vec had spent years searching for any real evidence. He had read every document, every fragment of data, but it was always the same, just rumors, just stories. The High Council of the Dominion had long declared humanity a legend, a forgotten tale of the past. Still, something about the stories felt different. Unlike other myths, the details were too specific. Battles, planets, entire wars were described with such precision. How could something so detailed be fake? Vec wanted to believe, but belief was dangerous. The Council did not tolerate those who questioned history. The Dominion was the greatest power in the galaxy, ruling over hundreds of species. If humans had once existed, then where were they now? Why did no record speak of their end? A deep hum echoed through the hall, shaking the ancient shelves. Vec frowned. He had never felt something like this before. Moments later, an emergency signal appeared on his data tablet. Unidentified ships had entered Dominion space. That was impossible. No species dared to challenge the Dominion. He quickly tapped on the message, reading the report. The unknown fleet was massive, larger than anything seen before. The ships were sleek, black like the void, moving in perfect formation. The High Council chamber was in chaos. The leaders, tall figures dressed in flowing robes, argued among themselves. No one had ever seen ships like these. There were no messages, no warnings, just silence as the fleet approached. Some thought it was a lost civilization returning. Others feared it was a new enemy. The Supreme Chancellor, a towering figure with golden eyes, demanded answers. Who are they? What do they want? Before anyone could respond, a message echoed across every Dominion world. It was simple, clear, and filled with cold certainty. We are humanity. You took what was ours. We are coming. The chamber fell silent. Vec's heart pounded. Humanity. The myth? The lost species. Impossible. And yet, the words echoed across space. He quickly accessed the database, searching for any records of a war with humans. Every file was locked, classified beyond his level. Why? What was the Dominion hiding? Outside, the black warships stopped at the edge of Dominion territory. They did not fire. They did not move. They simply waited. The Council sent diplomats, but they received no response. The Supreme Chancellor ordered the fleet to prepare for war. Still, the human ships remained motionless. It was as if they were waiting for something. Vec stared at the screen, unable to look away. If the stories were true, then the Dominion was in danger. The humans, if they had survived, were not coming for peace. They had returned for something else, something darker. And for the first time in his life, Vec realized that myths were not always just stories. Sometimes they were warnings. The stars above Dominion Prime burned bright, but no one was looking at them tonight. Every eye was fixed on the dark warships hovering at the edge of the system. The fleet was massive, stretching farther than the Dominion's most advanced scanners could measure. No insignia, no markings, just silent, endless black metal drifting in perfect formation. The High Council chamber was filled with whispers of fear and disbelief. These ships should not exist. The Dominion had ruled unchallenged for centuries. No species had ever dared to march their fleets into its borders without permission. Yet here they were. And the message. Those 4 words still echoed in every Dominion world. We are humanity. We are coming. Vec sat at the back of the chamber, his hands trembling. He had spent years searching for the truth about humans. He had read every legend, every old war story, but the records always ended the same way, without an answer. It was as if history had been rewritten, as if someone had erased the final chapter. And now, that chapter had returned to finish itself. The Supreme Chancellor stood tall in the center of the room, his golden robes flowing behind him. His voice cut through the fear. "We do not bow to ghosts," he declared. "We do not kneel to myths. If they wish for war, we will give them one." A general stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Chancellor, our fleet is already mobilizing. We will send a warning shot. If they do not retreat, we will destroy them." Vec's stomach twisted. Destroy them. The arrogance of the Dominion was unmatched. They did not even consider the possibility that the humans might be stronger. For centuries, the Dominion had crushed every enemy with ease. No war had lasted more than a few weeks. But Vec knew this was different. These warships had appeared from nowhere, their technology far beyond anything the Dominion had ever seen. What if they weren't conquerors? What if they were survivors? The order was given. Dominion battleships lined up along the outer defense grid. A single warning shot was fired, an energy blast powerful enough to turn a planet to dust. It raced across space, crackling with violet light, heading straight for the human fleet. The beam struck the closest warship and vanished. No explosion, no damage. The energy simply disappeared as if it had never existed. The chamber filled with silence. The generals stared at the screen, their mouths open in disbelief. Then the humans answered. Every warship in the fleet lit up at once. A wave of energy pulsed through space. The Dominion sensors overloaded instantly. The planet's defense shields flickered, then collapsed. On the main display, red warnings flashed one after another. The Dominion's most powerful weapons were shutting down. The Supreme Chancellor's voice rose in panic. "What is happening?" A single message appeared on the screen, written in flawless Dominion language. "Your weapons are useless. Surrender." For the first time in history, the High Council of the Dominion was afraid. Vec's hands clenched into fists. This was not war. This was something worse. The humans had not fired a single shot, and yet the Dominion was already powerless. What kind of force could do this? Then something new appeared on the screen. It was a live video feed, broadcasting from the lead human warship. The image was dark, but a figure stepped forward. The entire council held their breath. The creature was tall, broad-shouldered, its face hidden behind a helmet. Its voice was deep, emotionless. "Your ancestors betrayed us. You erased us from history. We have returned." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some shouted for diplomacy, others for war. The Supreme Chancellor slammed his fist against the table. "We will never surrender," he roared. The figure did not react. It simply tilted its head, as if amused. "You already have." The transmission ended. Above the planet, the human warships began to move. The first explosion came without warning. It was not a weapon, not an attack, just the sound of space itself shattering as the human fleet surged forward. Their warships, black as the void, cut through the Dominion's outer defenses like they weren't even there. No energy shields could stop them. No automated turrets could track them. The Dominion's mighty fleet, once thought invincible, was suddenly nothing more than drifting metal. Vec watched in horror from the control center of Dominion Prime. Every screen in the command room flashed red, filled with desperate messages from the defense forces. The Dominion's greatest admirals shouted over one another, trying to make sense of what was happening. Their ships were vanishing from sensors one by one. Some were obliterated in flashes of blue light. Others simply stopped moving, their systems dead, their crews helpless. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled the galaxy through power, crushing every enemy without mercy. But now they were facing something they had never prepared for, an enemy they did not understand. A sharp alarm cut through the chaos. A transmission was coming through. Not text this time. A live signal. Every screen in the command center flickered and changed. A dark room appeared. A single figure stepped forward, armored in black, their helmet reflecting the dim light. The same voice as before echoed through the chamber. "You took what was ours. Now we take everything." The Supreme Chancellor stood, his golden robes trembling as he faced the screen. "You claim to be human," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You claim we betrayed you. Prove it." There was a pause. Then the human figure raised one hand, and something appeared in the air beside them. A holographic image. It was a planet. A dead world. The Dominion's homeworld, thousands of years ago. The image zoomed in, showing ruins buried under ice and ash. Ancient buildings, alien symbols, and then the remains of something else. Bodies. Skulls. Not Dominion. Human. Gasps filled the chamber. Vex's breath caught in his throat. This planet, the one they had always called their own, had once belonged to humanity. The Supreme Chancellor's face twisted in denial. "Impossible," he hissed. "Lies." The human figure did not move. "You called us myths. You erased us from your records. You built your empire on our graves. But we never disappeared. We watched. We waited. And now, we have returned." The command center erupted into chaos. Some council members demanded immediate surrender. Others screamed for war. The Supreme Chancellor slammed his fists against the table. "Enough," he roared. "You think you can intimidate us. You think we will kneel. The Dominion does not bow." The human figure tilted its head, almost amused. Then, slowly, it raised a single hand. Above Dominion Prime, the sky turned black. The human fleet, silent and motionless until now, unleashed its power. But they did not fire upon the cities. They did not destroy the palace. They did something far worse. They shut everything down. Every light. Every machine. Every ship. One by one, Dominion Prime's systems collapsed. The once bright capital of the galaxy was swallowed by darkness. Communication networks failed. Power grids flickered and died. The mighty warships that had once ruled the stars drifted, powerless, like dead things in orbit. For the first time in history, the Dominion was blind, helpless, defenseless. Vex's hands trembled as he stared at the darkened screens. This wasn't war. This was punishment. The human figure spoke one last time before the transmission ended. "You are not the rulers of the galaxy. You are not the masters of history. You are thieves. And now, you will pay the price." The screen went black, and above the darkened world, the warships of humanity waited. Vex stood frozen as the chamber descended into madness. The Supreme Chancellor barked orders at his generals, his voice sharp with fury. But there was nothing left to command. The Dominion's military, the greatest force in the galaxy, was now nothing more than floating wreckage. The defense grid was silent. The capital was dark. And above them, the human fleet loomed, untouched, waiting. For the first time in his life, Vex saw fear in the eyes of his leaders. They had ruled without challenge for centuries, believing themselves untouchable. They had erased histories, rewritten truths, and silenced those who questioned them. But history had a way of returning. A new transmission flashed onto the screens. This time, there was no armored figure, no shadowed room. Instead, the image was clear, a human face. Weathered, scared, yet calm. Cold, calculating eyes studied them. And then, the voice came, low and steady. "Your empire is finished. You know this. We know this. The only question left is how it ends." The Supreme Chancellor clenched his fists. "If you think we will surrender, you are mistaken." A long silence followed. Then the human nodded slightly. "That is unfortunate." The transmission ended. Above the planet, the warships began to move. It started with the outer colonies. In real time, They watched as entire Dominion planets went dark. Human ships arrived in silent waves, bypassing every planetary defense, dismantling them with frightening precision. But they did not slaughter civilians. They did not bomb cities. They simply took. Government buildings collapsed. Military bases crumbled. The Dominion's power was being erased in front of their eyes, piece by piece. Vec turned to his screen, searching through restricted archives. The truth had to be here somewhere. Who were these humans before? What really happened to them? Why had the Dominion worked so hard to bury their existence? And then he found it. A hidden file, locked away under ancient security protocols. His fingers moved fast, bypassing the codes, forcing the document open. The data flooded his screen. A war, not just any war. A betrayal. Thousands of years ago, humanity had risen faster than any species before them. They were explorers, inventors, warriors. The Dominion, back when it was just a young coalition of planets, had seen them as a threat. And so, in secret, they acted first. A coordinated strike. A silent war. Entire human colonies destroyed overnight. Their homeworld, once thriving, left in ruin. Those who survived were hunted, scattered. But they had not died out. They had vanished. No, Vec realized. They had been waiting. The Dominion had thought them extinct, thought history was theirs to control. But all they had done was light a fire. And now, after centuries of silence, the fire had returned, burning through the empire that had tried to snuff it out. He turned back to the others. "We have to stop this," he said, his voice shaking. "We did this to them. We are the reason they are here." The Supreme Chancellor glared at him. "They are invaders. They are a threat to—" "No," Vec stepped forward. "They are justice." Another explosion rocked the chamber as the power grids across the planet flickered violently. The humans were no longer waiting. They were advancing. A final transmission came through. A simple message. Surrender or become history. The Supreme Chancellor refused. He screamed. He ordered the remains of the military to fight. But it was over. The Dominion was not at war. It was being dismantled. Vec looked up at the screen, his heart pounding. He knew now that history could not be rewritten forever. Truth always returned. And this time, it had come in the form of a fleet of warships and a single, undeniable message. Humanity had never been a myth. They had been a warning. The darkness that had fallen over Dominion Prime was no longer just an absence of light. It was a presence, oppressive and suffocating. The once great planet, once the heart of an empire that stretched across the stars, now lay in ruin. The power grids were shattered, the cities were silent, and the people were gripped by fear, unsure of what would come next. Vec stood amidst the remnants of the High Council's chambers, his mind racing. The human fleet had left no room for negotiation. They had shown their strength without ever firing a single shot. But now, the Dominion was desperate. The Supreme Chancellor, furious and broken, had gathered what remained of his generals. They were preparing for a final stand, one last attempt to fight back against the humans. But Vec knew it was a futile effort. As the Chancellor paced back and forth, Vec's thoughts drifted to the humans. The warships that had appeared so suddenly, their technology beyond anything the Dominion had ever encountered. And yet they did not destroy everything in their path. They had disabled the fleets, crippled the defenses, but they had not wiped the Dominion from existence. They had been merciful. Or perhaps they had simply been waiting for the inevitable. Vec's thoughts were interrupted by a loud crackle from the communication panel. The screen flickered to life, and once again, the face of the human commander appeared. This time, there was no voice, no words. The commander simply stared into the screen, their cold eyes scanning the room. For a moment, there was silence. Then the figure spoke, the voice calm and calculating. "Your forces are scattered. Your power is gone. There is no more Dominion. There is no more empire. You have lost." The Supreme Chancellor's face turned red with rage. He stepped forward, his fists clenched. "We will never surrender. We are the Dominion. We are the rulers of the galaxy." The human commander's expression did not change. "You were never the rulers. You were thieves, parasites, and liars. You erased us. You stole our history. You killed us." The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. "You speak of the past. But the past is over. You are here now, and you will fall." The human commander's lips curled into something like a smile. "We are not here for vengeance. We are here for justice." The transmission ended, and once again the room was silent. The generals exchanged uncertain glances. The Dominion was not ready for this. No one was ready. The human fleet had struck at the heart of their empire and left nothing but a shattered shell. They had shown mercy, but there was no more room for mercy. The war was no longer a matter of who had the greater firepower. It was a matter of survival. The Supreme Chancellor ordered his remaining forces to mobilize. The fleet was small, but it was all they had left. With trembling hands, the generals issued the commands, and the last of the Dominion's ships moved to the edge of their territory. But Vec could already feel it, the inevitability of what was to come. The human warships did not move. They simply watched. They had already taken control of every vital system in the Dominion. The fleet was nothing more than a distraction, and Vec knew that soon the final blow would come. And then the broadcast came again. This time, it was not the commander. It was a fleet-wide message sent directly to every Dominion vessel. The image on the screen was simple, but its message was clear. A human flag, the same flag from the old legends, the emblem of humanity's final stand. Your time is up. The human fleet surged forward, and the remaining Dominion ships had no chance. In moments, the once proud ships of the Dominion were reduced to drifting husks. Their shields failed. Their weapons fired wild, but they were no match for the human technology. One by one, the ships fell silent. No explosions, no dramatic end, just the quiet finality of a broken empire. Vec watched the carnage unfold before him, his heart heavy with the weight of everything he had discovered. The Dominion had been built on lies, on the erasure of humanity, and now it was paying the price. And yet, something inside him stirred. The humans had come for justice, not destruction. They had not wiped out the Dominion completely. They had allowed it to collapse in on itself, a self-inflicted wound. But the truth of what they were fighting for, what they were trying to reclaim, was finally clear. Humanity had not come to conquer the galaxy. They had come to take back what was theirs. As the final battle raged above Dominion Prime, Vec made a decision. He could no longer remain a part of this empire, this lie. The Dominion had stolen history, had erased a people from existence, and now the truth was coming to light. The war was over, and in its ashes, a new beginning was on the horizon. The last remnants of the Dominion's fleet drifted in the void, their systems failing one by one as the human warships circled them like vultures. The once mighty armada, the pride of the galaxy, had been dismantled piece by piece without so much as a single act of retaliation. Dominion Prime, the shining jewel of the Empire, now sat in the quietest of silences, broken, shattered, and humbled. Vec stared out of the shattered windows of the High Council's tower, the vastness of space stretching out before him. He had lived his whole life within the bounds of Dominion law, within the borders of the lie that had defined everything he knew. The Dominion had been invincible. The stories of humanity were nothing more than myths. But now, standing amidst the ruin of his empire, the truth was undeniable. Humanity had come, not as conquerors, but as survivors. They had waited for the day the Dominion would collapse under its own weight, and they had struck when the time was right. The last fleet had fallen. The capital was a shell. The great cities lay in ruins. And still, the human fleet remained in orbit, waiting for the final pieces to fall into place. The transmission came again. This time, there was no challenge, no threat. Only a single figure appeared on the screen, a human, standing in the same dark room that Vec had seen before. Their face was still masked, but the eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, looked directly into the camera. "The Dominion is finished. What remains of your leadership will be judged. The lies you have built your empire upon will be erased." Vec felt the weight of those words in his chest. He knew it was true. The Dominion had been built on stolen history, erased truths, and the suffering of millions. What the humans were doing was not just vengeance, it was justice. He had seen the archives, the ancient records that told of a time before the Dominion, when humanity had been powerful, a species that had been eradicated, erased from the pages of history. And now, they had returned. The human figure's voice cut through his thoughts. "There will be no more lies, no more manipulation. The galaxy will remember who you truly were." Vec turned away from the window, his mind racing. The counselors, the generals, the leaders of the Dominion, they had all been blind. They had believed in their own superiority, in their right to control the galaxy, to reshape history as they saw fit. But the humans had come to tear down that illusion. They had shown them what true power was, not brute force, not weapons, but truth. The truth of what had been stolen. The truth of what had been hidden. A part of him wanted to fight back. The Dominion could still have soldiers, ships, a final defense. But another part of him knew the war was already over. Humanity had no interest in simply destroying them. They had already done that. What remained was to tear down the walls of deception, to expose the lies that had kept the Dominion in power for centuries. And that was the real victory. He felt a strange sense of clarity wash over him. The Dominion had fallen, and it would never rise again. There was no room for empires built on lies. There was no future for those who ruled through fear and suppression. The galaxy would be different now. The transmission ended. The screen flickered to black. For a long moment, Vec stood in the room, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. The truth had finally been revealed, and with it came the inevitable end of the Dominion. But what came next? What role would humanity play in the new galaxy? What would be the price of their return? Vec didn't know, but one thing was certain. The future was no longer in the hands of the Dominion. It was in the hands of the survivors, the ones who had been forgotten, the ones who had been erased from history. And as the last of the Dominion's powers slipped away, Vec realized that there was only one thing left to do. He would stand with humanity. He would help them rebuild. He would help them remind the galaxy of who they truly were. The silence of Dominion Prime was deafening. The once bustling capital of the galaxy, now a broken empty shell, stood as a monument to the Empire's fall. Its towering structures, once symbols of might and dominance, lay in ruin, crumbling under the weight of their own arrogance. The streets were deserted, abandoned by the millions who had once called this place home. No longer a symbol of power, it was now a graveyard of memories, a place where the truth had come to light. And the past had finally caught up with the present. Above the planet, the human fleet remained, their warships hanging in the void like silent watchers, waiting for the final moments to unfold. Their task was not to finish the destruction of the Dominion. That had already been accomplished. Instead, they had come to ensure that the lies of the past would never be allowed to define the future again. They were not conquerors, nor were they here for vengeance. They were here for justice, and justice had been served. Vec walked through the empty halls of the High Council, his footsteps echoing in the vast, cavernous chambers. The walls, once adorned with portraits of the Dominion's greatest leaders, now stood bare, stripped of their prideful displays. The weight of his actions, of his decisions, pressed down on him. He had stood with the Dominion for most of his life, believed in its cause, accepted its lies. But now he was a witness to the consequences of those lies. The Dominion was gone. Its empire had crumbled. And in its place, there was a new order, a new beginning. In the distance, the sounds of distant explosions rumbled through the air. They were not the sounds of war, but of change. The remnants of the Dominion's forces were being disbanded, the last vestiges of resistance being swept away by the humans who had come to claim what was rightfully theirs. Vec had once believed that the Dominion was invincible, that it would endure forever. Now all he saw was the truth, the inevitable decay of a system built on lies. As he stood before the empty council table, his mind wandered back to the moment when the truth had been revealed to him. The human fleet had come, and with it they had shown him what the Dominion had been hiding for centuries. They had not come to conquer. They had not come to destroy. They had come to reclaim what was theirs, what had been taken from them. And now, as the last of the Dominion structures crumbled around him, Vec understood. They had come not just to free themselves, but to free the galaxy from the shackles of deception. The human commander had been right. The Dominion was not the rulers of the galaxy. The Dominion had been a parasite, feeding off the suffering of others, rewriting history to suit its own needs. But now, the truth had returned, and with it, a new future had been born. Vec's thoughts were interrupted as a figure entered the room. It was one of the human commanders, dressed in the same dark armor that had become synonymous with their fleet. The figure walked toward Vec with a purposeful stride, their face hidden behind a helmet. But Vec did not need to see their face to know who they were. He had seen them on the screens before, their cold, calculating eyes, their unwavering determination. The person standing before him was no longer just a representative of a species. They were a symbol of the future. The human commander stopped in front of him and removed their helmet, revealing the face of someone who had lived through the very horrors they had come to stop. Their eyes were weary, but resolute. They studied Vec for a moment before speaking. "It's over," the commander said, their voice calm but filled with authority. "The Dominion is finished, and with it, the lies that kept it alive." Vec nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the words. "I know," he said quietly. "I was a part of it. I believed in it." The human commander regarded him for a moment longer, then offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. "We all believed in it once, but the truth has a way of finding its way to the surface, and when it does, everything changes." Vec's gaze drifted to the view of the planet below, the smoke rising from the wreckage of the Dominion's capital. "What happens now?" he asked. "What will the galaxy become after all of this?" The human commander's expression softened. "The galaxy will be different. The Dominion may be gone, but that doesn't mean we're going to start another empire. We don't need another empire. What we need is something better. A galaxy built on truth, on cooperation, and on the knowledge that no one can be erased. The past has shaped us, but it will not define us. The future is ours to build together." Vec stood in silence, the weight of their words settling over him. He had spent his entire life in the shadow of the Dominion's power, believing that it was the only way. But now, as the remnants of that power crumbled around him, he saw the truth. The galaxy did not need another empire. It needed a future built on the lessons of the past, a future where humanity would no longer be erased, where the truth would always come first. The commander stepped aside, motioning for Vec to follow. "There's still work to do," they said. "The galaxy is vast, and there's a lot to repair, but we can't do it alone. We'll need everyone." Vec took a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of ash and smoke. But beneath it all, he felt something new, a sense of purpose. The galaxy had changed, and so had he. The Dominion was gone, but the journey was far from over. As they walked together through the ruined halls of the High Council, Vec knew one thing for certain. The future was no longer in the hands of the past. It was in the hands of those who dared to rebuild, to tell the truth, and to stand together. And that, Vec realized, was the beginning of a new era.